Let me bring in Graham Lloyd now, the environment editor with the Australian newspaper. Thanks for joining us again, Graham. I thought that was an astonishing admission from Kerry Schott today, that the whole plan she's aiming for might actually be impossible.
Well, I think reality is biting and she can't say anything else. The evidence is that even the projects that are underway are over budget and behind schedule. We're starting to get an idea now as the numbers that are involved in both transmission lines, wind turbines, solar panels, and they are extraordinary numbers. And to think that they will be just put in place in such a short time frame really beggars belief. And the problem is that the plan B doesn't seem to exist. So things could get very, very tough. And it's hard to know how you can reverse out of what might turn out to be a blind alley.
Well, that's exactly right. It'd be different if we had all this coal-fired generation or gas-fired generation standing back. We're keeping that on reserve in case Plan A fails. But we've demolished the coal generators, we've shut down and demolished some gas generators, and there is no Plan B, as you mentioned. Now, tell us about COP. I've been watching the stuff coming out of Egypt so far. It is just this ridiculous alarmist stuff, really lowbrow climate alarmism. But the serious work of this conference surely must be about how to get these renewable energy grids sustainable, whether they need to focus more on nuclear, whether the storage processes with pumped hydro or battery are actually being advanced quickly enough around the world. Tell us what they're going to get into in the nitty-gritty there in the next few days.
Well, I can tell you, Chris, that they're not going to get into that nitty-gritty at all. This COP is being held in Egypt on the African continent, and all they really want to talk about is money and how the developed world will be transferring money to assist the developing world in transition to low-carbon forms of electricity. It's a fight that goes to the very essence of what the United Nations framework is. And that is this called a grand bargain between the developed world that is supposedly responsible for all the problems and the developing world that really want to see a transfer of wealth to compensate for them supposedly having missed out. And the danger is the narrative that you have explained today and the pictures of terrible natural events has become the narrative of climate change. And so now the discussion is about loss and damage and how those with money, i.e. the Europeans, the Americans, the British and ourselves, are going to pay to shield the rest of the world from the floods and fires and other bad things happening. Of course, it's very difficult to separate things out. It's going to become a huge problem, but this COP is going to be all about trying to work out those issues.
Yeah, and good luck with that one. A lot of wealth transfer there. Look, and fair enough in a way, if you're going to stop the developing world from developing through cheap energy like the rest of us have, then they have to be compensated. But I would have thought the logical thing is to make sure they can get the energy. Just on these conferences and how self-defeating they can be, Graham, tell us about the Australian government's plan to have a COP meeting in Australia. They have to bid first, like trying to get the Commonwealth Games or Olympic Games. That'll cost a bit. If they're to get it, though, the thing will cost $100 million, won't it?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot at stake here, and it's interesting the way it's being framed because Anthony Albanese sort of casually during the election campaign said Australia would host one of these meetings, and it was apparently going to happen in 2024, and I guess the expectation was that that would just be agreed to. Obviously, it's not, and it's now been turned into a bit of an Olympic-style contest where we're going to bid, and we've put tens of millions of dollars on the table for diplomacy over the next few years. And the real cost is going to come at every turn where the government tries to take action in the area of fossil fuels or the area of renewables. It's going to be against this background that, look, if it doesn't, appease the IPCC process, we're not going to get the conference.
Good Lord.
So I think they're making a rod for their own back. It's going to be difficult.
I think they are. I think climate and energy policy is the story of this government, and it's only going to get worse. Thanks for joining us, Graham. Really appreciate your input. Graham Lloyd there, who's the environment editor at The Australian. He knows this stuff backwards. He's a committed environmentalist himself, but he sees through this cant and understands all the facts.